biting wind, a cruel sculptor, whipped across the desolate asphalt lot, making Maya Brooks shiver deeply within her threadbare coat that offered little more than a suggestion of warmth. She stood at the frayed edge of a storage auction, her fingers, chapped and cold, clutching her last $27. A sum that felt both impossibly meager, a mockery against the vastness of her need, and terrifyingly precious. A fragile hope against an indifferent world. Around her, a stark tableau of privilege unfolded. People in sleek designer jackets and polished leather shoes exchanged glib jests, their laughter sharp, brittle and dismissive, cutting through the cold air as they cast quick, disdainful glances her way. They mocked her silent presence, her ragged appearance, for even daring to trespass into a space designed for those with disposable income, a place where dreams were casually bought and sold. All she wanted, with an ache that hollowed her bones and resonated in the marrow, was a single night's reprieve. A place, any place, to keep her young son, Jalen, warm and safe from the cold, unforgiving world that had already taken so much. When the time came, and she eventually swung open the rusty, creaking door of her newly purchased, abandoned unit, the crowd's jeers intensified, a chorus of mockery rising louder, sharper, more venomous than before. They howled, a symphony of cruel amusement, at the sight of what seemed like nothing but trash, their laughter echoing across the lot like hollow thunder. But then, as Maya, fueled by a desperate, defiant spark, pushed aside a collapsed, grimy shelf and a pile of sodden cardboard that reeked of mildew and despair, her trembling fingers brushed against something solid metallic, hidden deep within the refuse. She uncovered a heavy, locked metal trunk, its surface scarred with the deep gouges of age, its brass corners tarnished with time. Etched elegantly upon its darkened lid was a name that sliced through the cacophony, silencing the laughter and sending a ripple of bewildered recognition, then outright shock through the onlookers. A name no one, least of all Maya, had ever expected to see there. She froze, the cold metal surprisingly warm against her trembling hands, as the profound, almost sacred weight of what she held settled upon her, a burden and a promise. Before we delve deeper into Maya's harrowing journey and the unexpected turn her life took, transforming her from a ghost in the shadows to a beacon of resilience, we'd be profoundly grateful if you'd consider hitting that subscribe button. Your unwavering support means the world to us, fueling our mission to bring you even more powerful, inspiring stories of resilience and hope from the forgotten corners of our world. Now, let's pick up the shattered threads of Maya's life and weave them into the tapestry of her remarkable transformation. Maya Brooks once measured her life in the predictable, comforting rhythms of demanding hospital shifts and the hurried, joyful chaos of school runs. Her days had been a relentless but deeply meaningful dance between caring for others, her patients often clinging to life by a thread, and nurturing her own beloved family. Then her husband, a man of quiet strength, boundless patience, and an enduring love that had been her anchor, succumbed to a merciless illness that devoured him slowly, agonizingly, breath by ragged breath, within the sterile, ugly confines of a hospital room that felt more like a tomb. After his last ragged breath, a sound that would forever haunt her, Maya stopped counting shifts and, with a crushing despair that clawed at her soul, started counting bottles instead. One empty bottle lined the sink, its glass glinting accusingly in the dim light. Two more stood like silent sentinels on the nightstand, their labels blurred by condensation and tears. Three were hidden shamefully under the bed, a secret testament to a grief too vast, too consuming to bear, a desperate, futile attempt to numb the raw, exposed edges of her reality. By the time the landlord's final eviction notice, crisp, white, and utterly unforgiving, was taped to her door like a death sentence, she was too numb to truly care, too hollowed out to feel the sharp, piercing sting of fresh despair. The injustice of it all, however, sat heavy and loud in the suffocating hallway, a palpable, suffocating presence that pressed against her, stealing what little air remained in her lungs. Her husband had fought for every single breath, a valiant, heartbreaking battle against an unseen enemy. The hospital, with its endless forms and unfeeling bureaucracy, had drained them dry, financially and emotionally, leaving them with nothing but astronomical debt and a gaping, unfillable void. And still, the world, in its cruel, relentless indifference, tossed her out like so much bad trash, a discarded commodity. Neighbors, their curtains barely parted, watched through the narrow slits of half-open doors, their whispers slithering like venomous snakes, cold and full of judgment. They spoke in hushed, damning tones of the black single mom who lost it, after her man passed, their judgmental tones thick with contempt, a grim satisfaction in their voices. Not a single person stepped in. No one offered a ride, a kind word, or a moment of genuine solace. Her hands shook violently as she packed the meager, pathetic remnants of their lives into worn cardboard boxes, her tremors no longer born solely of grief, but of the raw, agonizing bite of withdrawal, a monster that gnawed at her insides. Her son, Jalen, barely 7, a child forced to grow up too soon, tried to hold himself together, his small hands carefully folding his worn t-shirts with slow, deliberate movements, desperate to hide the sheen of tears in his eyes from his mother, a silent act of heartbreaking loyalty. He asked, his voice a fragile whisper, if they would stay with family, his innocence a painful contrast to her harsh reality. Maya, her throat raw and scratchy from cheap liquor and unacknowledged shame, changed the subject, mumbling vague, hollow promises that they would figure something out. A phrase that felt utterly meaningless even as she uttered it. At night, their makeshift bed was a patch of cold, unforgiving cardboard behind a gas station. The constant, metallic hum of the industrial coolers their only lullaby, a sound that only emphasized their profound isolation. Maya lay awake, every bruise and ache in her back screaming in protest against the hard ground, her gaze fixed on the garish orange glow of the gas station sign, a beacon of commerce and comfort that felt miles away. Jalen curled close beside her, his thin hoodie pulled tight over his head, a meager shield, pretending the rumble of passing trucks was the gentle sound of rain. A small, brave, heartbreaking attempt to create comfort where there was absolutely none. Strangers stepped over them, barely looking down, their faces illuminated by phone screens, their only thought to grab snacks and sodas from the brightly lit convenience store, utterly oblivious to the human suffering at their feet. The shelter staff knew her name. They knew her file too. The disheartening relapse notes, the missed meetings, the stern, increasingly impatient warnings. When she stumbled in late one evening, the acrid smell of stale smoke clinging to her clothes and the heavier stench of regret clinging to her soul, the woman at the desk didn't even offer a frown of disappointment. Her face was a mask of weary, practiced familiarity, a silent acknowledgement of Maya's repeated failures, as she simply slid a form across the counter and stated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, that the bed was gone, given away to someone who had shown up on time. By the time Maya reached the unforgiving sidewalk again, the biting wind feeling like a personal affront, she felt both impossibly laden with the crushing weight of her failures and utterly empty, a hollow shell. Her crumpled wallet held only $30 and an expired food card, mocking her with its uselessness, a cruel reminder of what she had lost. Her phone screen glowed with 10 missed messages from numbers she wouldn't call, bridges burned, connections severed. Jalen walked beside her, a silent, unwavering shadow, gripping his backpack strap so tightly his small knuckles had turned bone white, a desperate hold on the last shred of his shattered world. On the corner ahead, a curious crowd had gathered around a row of dull, gray metal doors, animated by the rapid-fire patter of a fast-talking man with a clipboard, his voice booming like a carnival barker. That was the first time Maya saw Unit 14. People in clean, crisp jackets, their faces reflecting a privileged boredom, laughed easily, waving numbered cards with practiced ease, trading cynical jokes about failed dreams and forgotten lives entombed in these metal boxes, their contents destined for public spectacle. Two teenagers filmed the entire gruesome spectacle on their phones, their faces lit by the eerie blue glow of their screens, documenting misery for clicks. The wind, relentless and unforgiving, slid under Maya's thin sweater, raising goosebumps on her arms, a shiver that ran deeper than just the cold. Her stomach growled, a hollow, embarrassing sound that seemed to echo in the vast emptiness inside her. Jalen heard it and, out of a quiet, painful loyalty that pierced her heart, he looked away, pretending not to notice her hunger. She meant to walk past, to keep moving, to disappear into the anonymity of the city. Auctions, she knew, were for people with money, people who could afford the luxury of hope, the thrill of a gamble. She had none. But as she slowed, drawn by an invisible current, the imposing steel doors of the storage units began to look less like cold, impersonal storage and more like the last roof still willing to let her in, a final, desperate chance at shelter, at a single night's peace. Maya drifted toward the auction crowd with slow, unsure steps, drawn by the cacophony of noise and the fragile, almost absurd hope of finding shelter, even if it was just a temporary reprieve. Jalen stayed glued to her side, his young eyes scanning every movement around them, as if expecting someone to suddenly shove them off the lot, to deny them even this tenuous, fragile presence among the comfortable. The auctioneer barked out numbers with rapid-fire precision, his voice booming across the concrete, while people waved their numbered cards with loud, almost arrogant confidence, their bids a casual gesture of their wealth. Every unit opened with a dramatic hiss of metal, followed by groans of disappointment or bursts of sharp, cruel laughter, as bidders judged the haphazard piles of forgotten possessions inside, their value often reduced to a cynical punchline. Unit 14 sat off to the side, forlorn and neglected, a pariah among the units, its door dented, its label half peeled away, a thick layer of dust coating its rusty frame, a silent testament to its prolonged abandonment. One man, his voice dripping with condescending humor, joked loudly that even the spiders had moved out years ago. Another, with a snort of contempt, added that the unit was only good for dumping trash, for discarding failures. The crowd laughed, a loose, careless sound that people make when they are utterly comfortable, utterly secure in their world, assuming everyone around them shares their ease, their privilege. Maya, however, saw past the mockery, past the trash. She studied the empty, dust-laden corners of Unit 14, her mind conjuring a vivid image of a cold but sheltered floor, a place where she and her son could hide for just one night, away from the biting wind, away from the judging eyes of the world. Her palms grew slick with sweat, her breath felt thin and shallow in her chest, a tight knot of anxiety. She knew, with a painful, crushing clarity, how ridiculous this seemed, how utterly absurd her desperation must look to these comfortable people. Yet, desperation, a primal, ancient force, pushed her forward, an invisible, inexorable hand at her back, propelling her into the unknown. Jalen, sensing her hesitation, her internal battle, whispered that they could keep walking, his voice a quiet, plaintive plea to escape. She nodded, her throat tight, but her feet remained rooted to the spot, a stubborn defiance in their stillness. When the auctioneer finally reached Unit 14, barely anyone raised their head, dismissing it as worthless, beneath their attention. He called out the starting bid, his voice echoing eerily across the silent concrete, the only sound for a moment. A profound, uncomfortable silence followed, broken only by the distant, mournful hum of traffic on a far-off highway. A woman muttered darkly that the place smelled cursed. A man, trying to lighten the uncomfortable mood, joked that whoever touched it might get fleas, his laughter hollow. Then, with a surge of desperate courage that made her entire body tremble, a raw, almost violent impulse, Maya lifted her hand, her arm feeling impossibly heavy, yet utterly resolute. The shift in the crowd was instant, palpable. Heads swiveled in unison, eyes wide with incredulity, turning to stare at her, a collective gasp. Someone laughed under their breath, a short, sharp bark of disbelief, quickly stifled. A teen filming on his phone whispered excitedly, his voice crackling with anticipation. "This is gonna go viral, for real." Maya lowered her eyes, unable to meet their cruel, judging gazes, but she kept her hand resolutely raised, a flag of defiance against their scorn. Jalen swallowed hard, his small hand gripping the hem of her sleeve, his knuckles white with a mixture of fear and a fragile, nascent hope. The auctioneer, almost amused by the unexpected turn of events, repeated the bid, his voice carrying a hint of wry surprise. No one, not a single person, challenged her. He looked around once, then twice, a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps pity, perhaps respect, in his eyes, before slamming his clipboard against his palm with a decisive, final smack and announcing the win. The crowd clapped in mock celebration, a few voices calling out loudly that she had overpaid. Their words barbed arrows meant to wound. Maya ignored the sharp sting of their derision, though her chest tightened painfully, a familiar ache of humiliation. She stepped toward the unit, the small ring of keys the auctioneer had dropped into her hand feeling cold and gritty, as if they carried a history of endless disappointment, of countless doors to nothing. Jalen stood directly behind her, shifting from foot to foot, bracing himself. Maya knew, for yet another letdown, another crushing blow. The moment the lock clicked open, a gust of stale, Heavy air brushed her face, thick with the smell of decay and forgotten time, a testament to years of neglect. Dust spiraled lazily in the sliver of light filtering through the open doorway, dancing like forgotten ghosts. Inside, cardboard scraps, broken hangers, and old, empty crates filled the view, a chaotic jumble of discarded lives. It looked utterly worthless. It looked abandoned by someone who had stopped caring long before Maya had ever arrived. A couple nearby whispered, their voices cutting through the still air with malicious precision, that she should have bought food instead. Another scoffed, predicting with cruel satisfaction that she would be sleeping in garbage tonight. Maya heard every word, every cruel jab, every dismissive comment that aimed to strip away her last vestiges of dignity. She stepped inside anyway, into the stench and the gloom, a defiant act. Jalin followed, nudging aside a cracked plastic bin with his worn shoe, his small face a mask of anxious determination. Maya knelt, brushing away debris, her desperate eyes scanning for any corner clean enough, sheltered enough to lie on, to offer even a fleeting moment of respite. Her fingers, still trembling from the cold and the adrenaline, hit something solid, something metallic, hidden beneath a collapsed shelf, a jarring anomaly in the wasteland of trash. A trunk, heavy, locked, utterly out of place in the sprawling, haphazard mess of forgotten junk. Something in Maya's chest flickered, a faint but incredibly sharp sensation, a profound intuition, as if the universe had just cleared its throat, signaling a pivotal, undeniable moment. She brushed away more debris, fully revealing the metal trunk. Its surface was dented and scratched, but surprisingly sturdy, its edges lined with faded, barely decipherable labels, remnants of a past life. Jalin crouched beside her, his whisper a mix of fear and fragile, budding hope. It looks important, Mom. He didn't want to believe in anything too soon, not after so much disappointment, so many broken promises. She tugged at the handle, but the trunk barely shifted, rooted to the dusty floor as if it were an ancient relic. A cloud of thick, acrid dust puffed up around them, making her cough, her throat still raw from the cheap liquor and the cold. From the doorway, a man, still clinging to his cynical amusement, joked. Looks like you found your trash treasure. Someone else laughed, suggesting she pawn the lock for gas money. Their words laced with scorn. Maya kept her back turned, her jaw tight, her fingers trembling as she wiped the top clean with her sleeve. A desperate attempt to uncover any clue. A small, elegant engraving began to peek through the grime, a name taking shape in the fading light. Dr. Adrian Keller. The name meant absolutely nothing to her, yet the formal, almost academic tone of the engraving, the precision of the script, made her pause, a sudden jolt of curiosity piercing through her numbness. She tried the latch again, still locked, stubbornly defiant. She breathed slowly, deeply, grounding herself, just as the grief counselor had once taught her before she had stopped going, before despair had swallowed her whole. Inhale, hold, release. Her pulse, which had been racing with a wild frenzy, began to steady, a fragile calm settling over her. Jalin nudged her shoulder, his small finger pointing to a corner of the unit where a thin, sturdy metal rod rested among broken pieces of wood, a discarded handle from an old broom. Maya picked it up, its unexpected weight surprisingly reassuring, a tool in her trembling hand. She slid it under the trunk's stubborn, rusted latch. She pushed a primal surge of strength. The metal groaned in protest, a long drawn-out cry of resistance. One more resolute push, a desperate, almost violent heave, and the lock snapped open with a tired, resonant crack that echoed loudly in the silent unit. Maya froze for a moment, startled by her own unexpected strength, by the sheer force she had just summoned. When she slowly lifted the lid, a faint, almost clinical scent, like old paper and antiseptic, shifted in the stale air inside the unit, mingling with the dust. Inside, nestled with meticulous care, were thick, bound notebooks wrapped in protective plastic, small, sealed containers, thick, cream-colored envelopes, and a sturdy leather-bound diary with a tarnished nameplate that perfectly matched the elegant engraving on the trunk. Everything was arranged with careful, deliberate intent, not haphazardly tossed away like discarded junk, but preserved, cherished. Jalin whispered, his voice hushed with awe. It looks scientific. Maya frowned slightly at the intricate diagrams on the first page she pulled out, tight, precise handwriting, intricate chemical sketches, notes about trials and frustratingly failed approvals, the meticulous record of a brilliant, thwarted mind. Her late husband, in his healthier days, used to show her his medical pamphlets, tracing diagrams with hopeful, eager fingers, dreaming of a future he would never see. She sat back on her heels, steadying her breath, and began to read a few lines from the leather diary, her eyes devouring the words. Dr. Keller, the meticulous, passionate author, wrote about a treatment he fiercely believed in, a groundbreaking discovery he claimed could fundamentally change outcomes for patients no one else could save, a true medical miracle. He meticulously described endless, frustrating meetings, insurmountable political walls, and a dismissive, entrenched board that consistently rejected his life's work, burying it in bureaucratic red tape. His words carried the heavy weight of exhaustion, the profound fatigue of a man fighting an impossible battle, yet also a sharp, unwavering clarity, a fierce conviction. It was the voice of a man watching his life's dream fade into obscurity, yet still pushing forward, against all odds, against the powerful forces aligned against him. Maya felt something profound shift within her chest. Not yet hope, not fully, for hope felt too dangerous, too fragile to embrace, but a powerful, resonant recognition, a deep empathy that resonated in her very bones. The tone in Keller's writing, the stubborn, fiery determination in his words, mirrored the unyielding spirit she remembered in her husband's voice when he had fought so desperately to stay alive, that admirable, unyielding spirit she had once so deeply admired and had thought was gone forever. Jalin leaned closer, studying her face with worried eyes, his small hand instinctively reaching out. She hadn't even realized tears had slipped silently down her cheeks until he quickly, gently, wiped one away with his sleeve. A tender gesture that broke her heart and simultaneously healed a piece of it. The longer she read, the straighter her back sat. A new resolve, a fierce, quiet purpose, beginning to take root within her, pushing through the rubble of her despair. The room around them, once filled with the echoes of cruel laughter, seemed to grow quieter, the outside whispers blurring into an indistinct hum, fading into irrelevance. This wasn't trash. This wasn't a fluke. It felt with an undeniable visceral certainty, like a hand reaching out from another life, from another time, from the grave itself, urging her, compelling her, to stand up again, to fight again, to live again. Maya closed the diary, holding it tightly against her chest for a moment, its leather binding a solid comfort, a tangible link to a purpose she was just beginning to grasp. Her breath steadied, her eyes, once dull and shadowed with despair, sharpened with a new, fierce clarity, a spark of awakening. The trunk wasn't just storage anymore. It was a spark. It was a lifeline. It was a weapon. Maya walked out of the storage facility the next morning, the heavy trunk strapped securely to a borrowed dolly, a look on her face that people hadn't seen in years, a determined light in her eyes, a resolute, almost formidable set to her jaw. Jalen pushed from behind, grunting softly under the unexpected weight, his small hands helping propel their strange, precious cargo forward, a shared burden, a shared hope. A few of the bidders from yesterday watched them go, their whispers floating on the cold air, speculating with renewed scorn that she must be planning to sell the metal for scrap, still judging her by her threadbare coat. Maya didn't bother to correct anyone. Their opinions were as worthless as the empty units they had mocked. The diary, her new talisman, remained tucked inside her jacket, close to her ribs, its weight a constant, comforting presence, a secret burning against her skin. Her first stop was a small, unassuming clinic, its exterior as drab and unwelcoming as her own circumstances. The receptionist, her face a mask of bored indifference, barely glanced up from her computer when Maya carefully placed Keller's meticulously detailed notes on the counter, the precious papers feeling suddenly fragile in her hands. Once she realized Maya wasn't a doctor or even a student, her perfunctory smile thinned, fading into a polite but firm dismissal. She slid the papers back across the counter with careful precision, as if subtly distancing herself from potential trouble, from something too unorthodox, and stated, her voice clipped and professional, that the clinic wasn't equipped for strange materials. Maya thanked her anyway, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly, and left, the sting of rejection a familiar, dull ache that she had learned to endure. She tried a university next, its imposing, ivy-covered architecture a stark contrast to her humble appearance, to the chipped paint on her dolly. A burly security guard watched her climb the wide, imposing stairs, his eyes lingering on her worn shoes and the faint tremor in her hands, judging her, dismissing her with a glance. Inside, two sharp-eyed researchers, their lab coats pristine, skimmed the intricate diagrams and pages of dense, complex notes, but dismissed the entire body of work in under a minute, their intellectual arrogance a palpable force. One, with an air of superior condescension, suggested she was misunderstanding old data, a naive fool stumbling upon academic detritus. Another, less subtly, implied she had found mere propaganda, that someone had unceremoniously dumped decades ago, a joke of a discovery. Their dismissive tone made her skin prickle with a mixture of frustration and a hot wave of indignation. Jalen stared at them, his young face a troubled canvas, as if he couldn't decide whether he was more angry at their unkindness or embarrassed by their cruel amusement. Maya didn't blame him. She felt both deeply, the humiliation burning in her cheeks. Over the next agonizing days, Maya continued her relentless quest, carrying the heavy trunk everywhere, pushing through the barrage of comments that stabbed deeper than she had expected, deeper than any physical pain. People treated her like a nuisance, a delusional woman chasing a fantastical, impossible dream. Some, noticing her persistent trembling hands, immediately assumed she was still using, their judgment sliding over her skin like old, persistent grime, attaching itself to her like a shroud. The physical agony of withdrawal continued to make her body ache, every joint screaming in protest, every nerve ending frayed and exposed, but the sheer effort of quitting, the hard-won, brutal battle against her demons, had forged an unshakable stubbornness within her, a core of iron. She refused to fall back. She would not fall back. Her son was watching. On her fifth attempt at a less prestigious, somewhat bohemian lab tucked away in a converted warehouse, a young lab assistant named Ren, his face earnest and genuinely curious, saw the Keller engraving on the trunk and froze, his hand midair as he reached for a beaker. He asked, his voice unexpectedly lowered, almost cautious, as if speaking a sacred name, "Where did you find this?" He then led her, with a new sense of urgency, his usual languor replaced by a brisk purpose, to a small group of senior researchers who, unlike the others, took their time, meticulously studying the notes, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intense focus. Their subtle shift in posture, the sudden gravity in their expressions, the way they exchanged significant glances, told Maya, with an undeniable certainty, that they recognized something serious, something profoundly important, something revolutionary. But recognition, she soon learned, often brought danger. A prominent board member, a Dr. Lyson, a man whose tailored suits seemed to exude authority and control, arrived shortly after, having been notified about the materials, his presence radiating an uncomfortable tension. His smile was far too polished, too practiced, too smooth to be genuine, a mere social artifice. When he flipped through Keller's meticulously kept diary, his expression tightened for a mere fraction of a second. A fleeting flicker of alarm or recognition that Maya, with her newly sharpened senses, honed by years of struggle, caught instantly. He insisted, his voice smooth and authoritative, laced with an underlying threat, that the documents were outdated and needed to be immediately placed under review. Already reaching for the trunk with a proprietary, possessive air, as if it were already his, Maya instinctively stepped back, placing one hand firmly on the lid, guarding it, a lioness protecting her last hope. Ren, sensing the escalating tension, the unspoken battle for control, gently blocked Lyson, insisting with quiet conviction, his young voice surprisingly firm, that the work deserved proper, independent verification. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken tension, a silent battle of wills. Lyson's voice sharpened, his polite facade cracking like thin ice, as he accused Maya of mishandling restricted research, attempting to intimidate her with legal jargon and his superior position. She felt her nails dig into her palms, fighting the overwhelming urge to crumble under the crushing weight of his authority, to retreat into the shadows where she felt safest. But instead of retreating, instead of giving in, instead of breaking, she opened the diary directly to a page where Keller had written, in painstaking, furious detail, about sabotage during his trials, about a deliberate conspiracy. Ren, understanding the gravity of the moment, sensing the shift in power, read the damning entry aloud, his voice clear and resonant. One specific line named a powerful board member directly involved in burying the entire project. His complicity laid bare. Lyson's face, usually so composed, so unreadable, went visibly pale, the blood draining from his features as his deception was exposed. That was the moment Maya realized, with an undeniable, electrifying certainty, that she wasn't imagining the immense weight of the truth she held in her hands. She was holding a match that would ignite a firestorm. The investigation that followed moved agonizingly slowly at first, bogged down by bureaucratic inertia and powerful influences, forces desperate to keep the truth hidden. But Keller's relentless, detailed diary, a testament to his unwavering spirit and meticulous dedication, forced every closed door open, one by one, relentlessly. Wren and the dedicated researchers, galvanized by Maya's raw courage and Keller's undeniable, meticulous records, tirelessly gathered crucial evidence, emails, archived proposals, and reports Keller had meticulously mentioned in his entries. Patterns began to form, dates lined up with damning precision, every single thread pointing back, inexorably, to Lyson and his web of corruption. Pressure built, relentlessly, a tidal wave of public outcry and institutional scrutiny, until the board had no remaining room, no possible justification, to protect him, to shield him from the consequences of his actions. When the scandal finally went public, exploding across news headlines and social media, the story of betrayal and suppression reaching every corner, investors, enraged by the cover-up and the lost opportunity to save countless lives, immediately demanded that Keller's groundbreaking research be revived and funded without delay. For the first time in years, Maya felt her spine straighten, not with effort or defiance, but with a natural, effortless grace, a true reclaiming of her inner strength. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, respected, acknowledged. The promising treatment entered rapid development, and experts, after thorough, independent review, valued Keller's visionary work, once dismissed as worthless, at more than $100 million. It didn't feel real, not truly, not tangibly, until she saw Jalen's face brighten for the first time since his father had tragically died. A genuine, joyful light that filled her heart to overflowing, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Maya, with quiet dignity and a profound sense of responsibility, contacted Keller's wife and daughter, women who had endured their own unique grief and struggle. She met them in a small, discreet cafe, a neutral ground, and placed more than $50 million into their hands, a legacy reclaimed, a profound act of restorative justice. She explained, her voice soft but firm, imbued with a quiet power, that this incredible discovery, this invaluable legacy, belonged to their family first, a testament to Dr. Keller's genius and sacrifice. They cried, tears of grief and overwhelming gratitude flowing freely, their pain finally acknowledged, their father's work vindicated. Maya simply held their hands, offering silent comfort, knowing that true gratitude didn't require many words, only shared understanding. With the remaining, substantial funds, Maya built a pioneering center dedicated to families crushed by the relentless burdens of addiction, profound loss, or devastating financial collapse, a haven for those who felt invisible and forgotten. She filled its welcoming, sunlit halls with compassionate counselors who intimately understood what rock bottom truly felt like, who had walked that desolate path themselves, and who spoke not from textbooks, but from lived experience. She walked those halls daily, her stride confident, her posture erect, greeting people with the deep, unwavering calm she had once desperately begged for. A hard-won peace she had finally found within herself, a peace that emanated from her very being. One quiet afternoon, she stood alone in her office, a sanctuary of purpose, her palm resting gently on Keller's worn leather diary, its familiar weight a tangible, comforting connection to her past, to the man who had unknowingly saved her. She finally understood the profound, intricate truth, a realization that settled deep in her soul. The money had undeniably changed her life, transforming her circumstances beyond imagination, providing comfort and security. But the research, Dr. Keller's unwavering pursuit of knowledge, his indomitable spirit captured in those pages, had, in a far more profound spiritual way, saved it. It had pulled her out of the suffocating darkness, long before the world had even begun to notice her, long before anyone else had offered a hand, long before she had found the strength to save herself. Maya Brooks, a living testament to the indomitable human spirit, proved that one broken moment, no matter how catastrophic, does not, and cannot, define an entire lifetime. If Maya's extraordinary fight and her journey of profound resilience have moved you, have offered even a flicker of hope in your own life, please stay with us. Hit that subscribe button and continue following stories that serve as powerful reminders of what true strength looks like, especially when the world has counted you out.